Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Yup, pretty much as per usual. As we've grown accustomed to with these leftoids, they make all kinds of noise, they engage in all of these dramatic actions, all in an effort to make it seem as if they are the majority, when in reality they're just a very loud minority. There's been all of this commotion, all of this noise that the Democrats have been making following Elon Musk's involvement in this audit of the federal government, all this screaming, all this bluster, but when it really comes down to it, there's not really much there now, is there? They've spent all this time building up these narratives in the hopes that it would catch on and they could then mobilize the people. But these days, nobody's really falling for it anymore. They make a whole lot of noise, but there's simply nobody really backing them anymore. In other words, the left is officially hitting rock bottom. You know, they used to be able to mobilize massive groups of people, huge protests, but no longer do they wield that power. I mean, look at the recent BLM protests in New York City, where like 10 people showed up.
Justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
Or that Puerto Rican protest that they did, I think, in Philadelphia, where again, only 2 people showed up with flags during the election. After those Tony Hinchcliffe comments at MSG, they used to posture big and, you know, to a certain extent, they got people showing up, people dumb enough to fall for the narrative and essentially LARP as revolutionaries. But nowadays, nobody cares. And just recently, obviously, Democrats have been going on with this Doge thing, this anti-Doge resistance rally that Democrats have been attempting to stage. But I guess there's not too much behind it because the moment it got just a little bit chilly, the moment the weather got a little bit cold, yeah, people just decided not to show up. Yeah, let's just say your narrative doesn't pack too much of a punch if cold weather impedes the revolution. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so let's first start off with this clip from Nick Sorter. He's on the ground in DC, standing in a hoodie with no hat, I guess signaling that it's not even really that cold outside. But apparently it was enough to call off the entire protest. Look at this.
So there's supposed to be more anti-Elon, anti-Doge protests out here at the U.S. Capitol tonight. And you can see it's extremely quiet. People packing up their signs and going home because they were canceled. The protests were canceled because it's too cold outside. You would think when you're calling somebody literally Hitler and Trump and Elon are Nazis, you'd think that maybe it's a little bit cold outside. It's like 36 degrees. You'd still come out if you actually believe these people were Hitler. They're just regurgitating talking points from the mainstream media, from the legacy media, telling them to say these things. And they don't believe any of them at the end of the day. It's all a big farce. It's a farce that the American people are no longer believing. That time is over. The legacy media has lost their grip. The Democrats have lost the plot totally. And you can see it's just not working. It's one of the quietest nights out here at the Capitol that I've seen in a very, very long time. So take that as you wish.
Now let's break down just how hilariously pathetic this is. These leftoid revolutionaries, who are basically trying to build this narrative that there's a hostile takeover of the federal government currently happening, you know, life or death stuff, a real existential threat, these supposed freedom fighters, they had to call it off because the weather got a little bit cold. Is that how that works? We're at the risk of a fascist strong-arm overtake of our democracy. Oh, but we have to postpone fighting against it because it got a little bit chilly outside. How sad is that? But really, it tells us one thing. The movement is dead. Because if what the Democrats were fighting for was actually genuine, well then there's no way that this would be the case. And just think about the rhetoric for a second. Think about what the politicians are saying. In their performance, they're declaring war. But obviously, it's just performative, or I guess the alternative, they're serious, but I would suggest very much against that, because if you can't handle chilly weather, well then you're probably not, let's say, battlefield ready. But obviously there's no real substance there. It's just fake outrage and performative nonsense. The reality is they're just narrative building, but at this point nobody cares anymore. Even they don't even care enough to frickin' show up. And in my view, the conclusion is that the Democrats have just lost the culture war. They've lost their momentum. And obviously at this point they've lost all credibility. You can't go around calling Donald Trump Hitler. He's literally Hitler. Hitler this and Hitler that. And I mean, it's not like they let that go back in 2016. They were calling the Madison Square Garden rally rally, essentially a Nazi rally, not that long ago. But again, you can't go around calling the other side Hitler, a threat to democracy, a fascist overtake of government, and then give up at the slightest discomfort. Democrats just continue to show everybody that they're not serious, they're not a serious party, and they're not credible. You know, it's got me thinking of the Al Smith dinner. Again, the same narratives over and over again. We've heard it from the media. Donald Trump's a threat to democracy, a threat to democracy. It's been years of this stuff.
It's kind of the end of democracy, at least the end of our democracy.
The return of Donald Trump to the White House could spell the end of democracy in America.
We could have a Trump presidency, and that would, in my opinion, be the end of democracy in this country.
I think that could be the end of our democracy, not to be too, pointed about it.
Hillary Clinton said a couple of weeks ago that if he runs and wins, that could be the end of our democracy. Do you share that fear?
I do.
Are you going to stand by and watch this man destroy the democracy?
I hope he will be beaten, or else it's the end of democracy as we know it.
That'll be the end of democracy as we know it.
It's the end of democracy.
That is a recipe for the end of democracy.
The country is at risk as long as one of our two major parties is so committed to destroying our democracy.
January 6th is what it was a potential end of our democracy.
It would essentially mean the end of democracy in the United States of America, and that is not hyperbole.
This is democracy at stake.
We are at a defining moment in our democracy, and if we don't have voting rights, I don't know that we have a democracy.
In Georgia, they are trying to destroy democracy.
A systematic effort to dismantle democracy, not just voter suppression, but subversion.
We don't like who you voted for, so we're just going to give it to the other guy. This is the end of democracy in America.
If we don't win the next election coming up, then it's the end of democracy as we know it. But then you get events like the Al Smith dinner, and the same people who are pointing the finger at Donald Trump and saying he's a threat to democracy are breaking bread with Donald Trump sitting right next to him.
Chuck Schumer is here looking very glum. Doesn't he look glum? He looks glum. But look on the bright side, Chuck, considering how woke your party has become. If Kamala loses, you still have a chance to become the first woman president.
You know, we just can't take these people seriously anymore because they're not serious. They're fundamentally unserious. Everything's a game. Everything's a narrative. Everything's a slogan. It's always about being in front of the camera and playing the media game, and the people are just sick of it. You know, I've been saying this. I said this right after the inauguration, where basically nobody showed up to protest Donald Trump, even though there were promises of over 100,000 people showing up just like the first time. What do we end up seeing? I think like 15 or 20,000 people. It's literally just the blue anon shills left. But like I said in that video, I think 2 weeks ago, it's the end of the hashtag resistance. The phony leftist resistance is clearly no more, as people just aren't showing up anymore. Nobody's falling for their fear-mongering. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.